Mississippi, and I've come to find out from some other family members that she was a distant relative of myself, but I never got a chance to meet her because she ended up moving to New York City, and she's still alive, but she's very private, so like she doesn't really like talk to the media or anyone, just family members and close friends. She's a relative on my mother's side of the family, and she grew up in Mississippi in the 40s, and she also helped with during the Civil Rights era when Medgar Evers was alive, who was a civil rights activist down in Mississippi who was assassinated back in '63. She was in college at the time when she met him, and she helped with the voter registration at the time when it was kind of difficult for people to get registered to vote during that time. So I'm proud to be reading just a little bit from her. You couldn't hear the phone?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right, chapter 1. Coming of age in Mississippi. I'm still haunted by dreams of the time we lived on Mr. Carter's plantation. Lots of Negroes lived on his place. Like Mama and Daddy, they were all foremen. We all lived in rotten wood two-room shacks, but ours stood out from the others because it was up on the hill with Mr. Carter's big white house overlooking the farms and the other shacks below. It looked just like the Carter's barn with a chimney and a porch, but Mama and Daddy did what they could to make it livable. Since we had only one big room and a kitchen, we all slept in the same room. It was like 3 rooms in one. Mama and them slept in one corner, and I had my little bed in another corner next to one of the big wooden windows. Around the fireplace, a rocking chair and a couple of straight chairs formed the sitting area. The big room had a plain, dull-colored wallpaper tacked loosely to the walls with large thumbtacks. Under each tack was a piece of cardboard which had been taken from shoe boxes and cut into little squares to hold the papers and keep the tacks from tearing through. Because there were not enough tacks, the papers bulged in places. The kitchen didn't have any wallpaper, and the only furniture in it was a wood stove, an old table, and a cake. Mama and Daddy had 2 girls. I was almost 4, and Adeline was a crying baby about 6 or 7 months. We rarely saw Mama and Daddy because they were in the field every day except Sunday. They would get up early in the morning and leave the house just before daylight. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when they returned, just before dark. George Lee, Mama's 8-year-old brother, kept us during the day. He loved to roam the woods, and taking care of us prevented him from enjoying his favorite pastime. He had to be at the house before Mama and Daddy left for the field, so he was still groggy when he got there. As soon as Mama left the house, he would sit up in a rocking chair and fall asleep. Because of the solid wooden doors and windows, it was dark in the house even though it was nearing daybreak. It was dark in the house, after sleeping for a couple of hours, George Lee would jump up suddenly as if he was awakened from a nightmare, run to the front door, and fling it open. If the sun was shining and it was a beautiful day, he would get all excited and start flinging open all the wooden windows, making them rock on their hinges. Whenever he started banging the windows and looking out at the woods longingly, I got scared. Once he took us to the woods and left us sitting in the grass while he chased birds. That night, Mama discovered we were full of ticks, so he was forbidden to take us there anymore. Now, every time he got the itch to be in the woods, he beat me. One day he said, "I'm going hunting." I could tell he meant to go by himself. I was scared he was going to leave us alone, but I didn't say anything. I never said anything to him when he was in that mood. "You heard me," he said, shaking me. I still didn't say anything. Whack! He hit me hard against the head. I started to boo-hoo, and as usual, and Adeline began to cry too. "Shut up," he said, running over to the bed and slapping a bottle of sweetening water into her mouth. "You stay here, right here," he said, forcing me into a chair at the foot of the bed, "and watch her," pointing to Adeline in the bed, "and you better not move." Then he left the house. A few minutes later, he came running back into the house like he forgot something. He ran over to Adeline in the bed and snatched a bottle of sweetening water from her mouth. He knew I was so afraid of him, I might have sat in the chair and watched Adeline choke to death on the bottle. Again, he beat me up. Then he carried us on the porch. I was still crying, so he slapped me, knocking me clean off the porch. As I fell, I hit my head on the side of the steps, and blood came gushing out. He got so scared and cleaned away all traces of the blood. He even tried to push down the big knot that popped up on my forehead. That evening, we sat on the porch waiting, as we did every evening, for Mom and them to come up the hill. The electric lights were coming on in Mr. Carter's big white house as all the Negro shacks down the bottom began to fade with the darkness. Once it was completely dark, the lights in Mr. Carter's house was even brighter, like a big light castle. It seemed like the only house on the whole plantation. Most evenings after the Negroes had come from the field, washed and eaten, they would sit on their porches, look up toward Mr. Carter's house, and talk. Sometimes as we sat on our porch, Mama told me stories about what was going on in that big white house. She would point out all the brightly lit rooms, saying that old lady Carter was baking tea cakes in the kitchen. Mrs. Carter was reading in the living room, and the children were playing upstairs. And Mr. Carter was sitting up counting all the money he made off Negroes. I was sitting there thinking about old lady Carter's tea cake when I heard Mama's voice. Exy May! Exy May! Suddenly, I remembered the knot on my head, and I jumped off the porch and ran toward her. She was now running up the hill with her hoe in one hand and straw hat in the other. Unlike the other farmhands who came up the hill dragging their hoes behind them, puffing and blowing, Mama usually ran all the way up the hill laughing and singing. When I got within a few feet of her, I started crying and pointing to the big swollen wound on my forehead. Sorry. Again, this is Come of Age in Mississippi by Ann Moody if you're interested in ordering the book or reading it.